Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is Feb 9, 2025. Want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. Please subscribe. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here today with Robert Reid. Where in the heck you calling in from, Robert?
In Portland, Oregon, just up the road a piece from where you are.
How cool is that? First question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
Right into it. I love it. I love it. Best thing, well, I think that the best thing is, it's empathy, it's experience, it's putting things around you that is different than what you know. And so I don't know, when I used to be a travel writer for a really long time, and I would think about travel way too much. And I used to think that the first thing that I could offer anyone is, you may not be able to go around the world and experience all these different things, but probably no matter where you are, you can take a bus. And I think that everyone should take a bus. And I say this because human beings, and particularly like human beings in the United States, don't often take public transit. And if you have to figure out how to go across town, how to get a bus, how to pay for it, if you need to change, where you need to walk to and all that, that's empowering, because that is a tool for understanding the world. It's weird as it sounds. And you're also going to perhaps be in the company of people that you wouldn't normally be in front of, with, or meeting, etc. And I think that is a building block to understanding how you fit in the world, which leads to empathy and understanding and expanding kind of what this world is empowering yourself to, I don't know if it's a little bit out of your comfort zone, but doing something like that. And it's as simple as taking a bus. And I'm telling you, so many people, and so many people, particularly in this country, have never taken public transit.
Yeah. No, it's really a great point. You really sussed it out. I appreciate your concise and articulate. And the way you describe things is that I got a good visual picture of that. And so why do you think humans collect or gather information?
Well, I mean, I think that everything gets information. I mean, do slugs gather information? Dogs in some capacity. I think we get information because we're trying to survive, on the most basic level. And if we understand fire is hot, don't touch fire, it changes, how you act when you see it. But, fire can make food taste better, or make it so that I don't get some kind of weird illness because I cooked it. We gather information to enrich our life and understanding how we fit into it. I think that we're just insatiably curious anyway. Maybe we're vain creatures and stuff, but she'll be coming around the mountain, but we want to go around the mountain to meet her. We don't want to wait for her, and we are seeking information always. And I think that's the fun of it. The joy of life is to learn and to give yourself permission to be curious, to find out things. And the more we direct it ourselves, the more, I don't know, the more you appreciate it, the more it becomes meaningful to you.
It's really well done. Is this need or want to collect information more innate or more invented?
I think it's innate in the sense that it's a learned behavior, perhaps, that goes back to those days of trying to survive. Big things are trying to kill you. Let's not be killed. Let's be warm. Let's have food. Let's plan so that we have food when the weather changes, whatever. And maybe that's learned, but at this point it feels innate in us, I think, to do so. I don't know, it feels like instinct, doesn't it? In a lot of ways. You don't even think about it when you do it,
Yeah. Do thoughts create emotions?
Thoughts create emotions. Okay. Thinking, emotion, thinking. Yes. Thoughts create emotion. Emotions create thoughts. It's a chicken and egg thing, perhaps, or maybe not even a chicken and egg thing, a thing that works with each other. I think that a lot of times you could be sitting and thinking about something that was said or that you saw, and you return to it later and you bring back that emotion. It spawns something, humor or sadness, or, feeling like you made a mistake and, and feeling bad about yourself or something like that.
Yeah, it
At the
seems
same
like
time, if you could have emotion, it will lead your thoughts a certain way, doesn't it?
yeah.
You know, so it's kind of an interesting interplay.
Yeah, it sounds like it's like a Mobius strip or the snake eating its tail. In
Mhm.
some of these early questions, is it more this or more that? Of course, it's both, and it depends, but it's really just prompts to go. You can go into anecdotes, stories, or tangents. I appreciate this. So, Robert, fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I.
Okay. Well, that I can think of pretty quick because sometimes when I'm thinking about something or talking about something, I'll start doing this because you know it is about writing, and in a sense, as I do video and stuff, it's about creating, or if it's an artist drawing, in a way that is a means of trying to understand this world, isn't it? And
Yeah,
so for me, a lot of times, like if I'm starting an article, you know, particularly when I was writing a lot, I would figure out what I want to say as I start putting it down. And it's like trying to unlock the possibilities that are kicking around your brain, and you throw it on a blank piece of paper, and or you're writing on a computer, and then you start to reshape it, and you start to realize kind of what your thoughts really are. There's a danger sometimes in creating things that if you're creating a video or if you're creating an article or if you're creating an art piece of some kind, that if you're not at some point will probably lean towards familiar ground. And every now and then I would catch myself going, oh, I'm just falling into what seems natural, but it isn't really what I think. And so sometimes with a draft of something, I'll have to step back and go, wait a minute, you know, this it's almost like the writing itself or what you're creating is guiding you to something that you have
that's
to at
yeah.
some point go, hey, hold on now, what where am I in this, you know? And so it's kind of this funny, you know, I say that I don't think until I start creating something, you know, and
Yeah,
usually writing.
that was a good verb because you did covered so much there. Just miming that you were typing. The question's rooted in McLuhan saying, "I don't know what I think until I say it." In
Uh-huh.
Joan Didion says, "I don't know what I think until I write it." But
Okay.
you made your gesture was writing, typing, but
Uh-huh.
indeed saying creating. See, that's what I'm after is it's
Uh-huh.
me and you versus the wording on the question. So I'm all
Mm.
for different types of verbs and nouns in the way I word it and the way you approach, responding, because I like that create, especially you captured what I am really pursuing in these is that I'm trying to get people to jump out of their stock lines. So you're saying, I go, oh, am I just regurgitating what I've said before or thought before, like when you're writing? Because
Mm.
I remember in our first dialogue together where I sort of complimented you because I liked seeing your index cards for your video. And
Yeah.
then you didn't have to hide them. That was part of the process for me to see what you were, back to the verb, creating your creating process.
I'm
Now,
working on a video right now, and I have this chart, two notebooks filled, and sometimes I love to make graphs, you know.
yeah,
This is about, you know, I don't know what it is. It's fairly nonsensical, but
no,
putting that
it makes
down,
sense to you, and then you suss it out and sort of create your podcast. So, can humans think without language?
well, you know, it depends on how you define language. I mean, a hieroglyph or visuals or, pictures of whatever kind of animals are in those French caves that were painted. Um, is that language? It is language. It's a visual language. Can we think in pure emotion? I mean, I don't know. I mean, animals, what kind of language do they have? Infants, what kind of language do they have? And I think you could probably boil it all down, I don't know, to some different type of language. But in terms of a language that you speak and seeing the words as you're thinking them, like typing out, I'm a person that writes a lot, so I'm very visual, and I fill weird notebooks with things. So sometimes I feel like I do think and almost see the words, but other times it's nothing connected to what the written language is, but I wouldn't say that it isn't language. I guess it's how you define language. I haven't really thought about exactly, but if you think about hieroglyphs and
Yeah.
all this, I think it is language.
Well, Chomsky says language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. Robert, what do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
Well, that's interesting. I mean, sometimes I think about this and for myself, and you can't say something or your writing is horrible or whatever. But on another level, something I think about quite a bit, I studied journalism in college, and in journalism itself is we talk a lot about the Second Amendment in this country, but the First Amendment is connected to free press. And, where we talk about fake news now, we talk about journalists have been called the enemy of the state from the White House. And so you think about language in terms of like, this is getting into news and coverage of where we are. And I'm speaking about the United States in particular. I kind of have felt for a long time that journalism 101 should be a mandatory part of our curriculum in schools.
Yeah.
Because I feel like our understanding of what a fact is, or what you read is, and trusting it and understanding how you build a story, particularly something that's trying to convey some kind of opinion or something that's factual. I think that we don't, as a whole right now, or I can say that right now we maybe have less agreement of how that's done, or understanding about how you have to be transparent in the sources that you have in language. In terms, I'm getting very journalistic here, but
what you're touching on is media literacy.
Media literacy.
Yeah, we were bringing this up yesterday about 9/11. When the footage of 9/11 happened in Ireland on the TV station, they scrolled underneath the footage. This is not a Hollywood movie.
Oh, really? Wow.
That's funny. I mean, it sounds funny, but I mean, it's sad, but it's like, how do we read? But I'm saying when even like you go to the store and the clerk and communication breaks down, what do you do? Kind of what's your fallback when communication doesn't work, when language doesn't work? What do you do? What do you do?
I've spent a lot of time traveling overseas when I was doing guidebooks and articles, and I would very frequently not be in a place where you could have real language connection with people. But you can find out that if there is a way, and you can do it with minimal, you can do it with gestures, we can do it with the smiles, that you can break through to people so that at least there's a patience in trying to understand what someone wants.
Yeah.
In terms of a clerk, it's very clear. There's only a couple of things you want. You want to buy this, or you're looking for something, and you can figure that stuff out. And I'm pretty versed in trying to have some kind of communication with the barest of words. And I find that people, generally speaking, kind of will help you. They want to help you. They want to understand you. And so it's patience, and it's understanding that you don't lean into frustration. This is an opportunity for connection. So you give it a little bit more time than you might normally.
I get gestures, the answer I get the most, but I love smiles, and patience is good. The patience line I love, my mom taught me, is God give me patience and give it to me now.
That's right.
But Robert, your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
This gets back into thought. What was the question before about thought and emotion?
Yeah, do thoughts create emotions?
And so this is kind of connected to that, isn't it? And so again, I see this weird kind of chicken and egg thing between them. I guess it depends on the people. Some people won't. Well, I get into action, versus feeling. Feeling is there no matter what, right? We'll feel something, even if it feels like you're neutral to some degree, or not paying attention, or you're tuned out. But to think in some capacity, isn't always there, isn't it? It isn't always there, because every now and then I'll catch myself wondering what happened the last 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Where was I?
Yeah.
And in a way, and that could happen if you're looking at your phone and you're just sucked into some world. And it's like, how have I been, long have I been looking at this? At the same time, I still don't know if I was thinking or feeling.
Yeah.
I don't know. I actually don't know. I have a hard time differentiating between the two, I think, sometimes. I think that I think more, but I feel like I probably feel more than I think.
But you know, the funny thing is most people say, I think we're more feeling beings. I mean, literally, that's a sort of ironic statement. But Bridget Bardot says, when I make love, I don't think. And I'm like, good luck. How do you turn your brain off? Like people who meditate, they go, okay, now think about not thinking. And so there's a car on my street with a bumper sticker and it says, don't believe everything you think. And I'm like, well, you could say, don't believe everything you feel.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe, the more we think about this, I wonder if the goal is to feel more and give yourself permission to sit and feel. And maybe that's harder for us to do, that we think that we're feeling. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, that's good. And saying, I don't know, or I can't answer that is totally valid. I'm not trying to catch you because you actually taught, just kind of revived this thing I just learned from Pascal, the poet, the philosopher mathematician. He says all the problems in the world could be saved if you could learn how to just sit in a room quietly.
Okay, there you go.
And that's sort of like, well, are you thinking about sitting in the room quietly, or are you just being conscious of your breath and being a feeling being? I mean, again, you can't separate it, but we think we can separate feeling from thinking because we invented the two words. So we go, oh,
silence has become a very big thing for me.
Yeah.
And when I was younger, I filled myself with noise and things constantly.
Yeah.
And now I'm very conscious. One of the things I like about waking up in the morning is this little room that I'm in is more or less silent. And I know that there are some certain hums and sounds that you hear. And then I think about what I want to add to that.
Yeah.
Consciously, as much as I can.
Yeah. When I take my first bike ride in the early morning, it's like 6:30. I go, why is it so quiet? This is amazing. Finally. And then I hit the first intersection. It's like, cars. And it's like, please, this silence is so welcoming.
Yeah.
Just hear nothing. And, these two questions are from Alan Turing in the 50s. One, is thinking a function of the soul?
The soul. The soul. Soul is a complex word, isn't it? Soul is, I sometimes wonder about that word. And I don't know that if I'm at ease exactly with the definition, because I think in some ways it's kind of governed by religion more than I wish it were. As someone that's irreligious, I mean, I don't have religion in my life. And so soul, what is that? What's the question again? Is thinking...
Is thinking a function of the soul?
Okay, so that means our individual essence, does that direct what we think? I could maybe say. Yeah. And that are we unique beings that are able to think unique, individualized thought based on what our little individual person is, or identity, I guess. And this gets into the whole zeitgeist and how we fit into really what our environment is, what we surround ourselves with, who the people are, where we are, what the language is, what the weather is like, and how much that impacts things, and whether we come up with a thought that is, when I was young, it was like, you didn't want to have a thought that wasn't completely unique and brilliant. Otherwise, you're wasting time. And over time in life, you start to accept that a lot of us come up with the same ideas that were kicked around in robes by the Greeks and well beyond that. I mean,
Yeah.
Keith Richards writes music and he says, look, I'm just a divining rod for things that are out here,
Oh my
so, and that
God.
gets back to creation. And then you have like Dylan talking about some of his lyrics, like darkness at the break of noon shadows even the silver spoon. And he says, like, I couldn't sit down and write that. And so Dylan is a collector of things. He's a
That yeah,
collector.
you're anticipating this major question we're going to get into.
Uh-oh. Oh, okay.
But it's good. I love it when people do that. But it's
Okay.
like Dylan said, I'm just a radio receiver, but I even like this one better because I was watching that video today, and from the Tribune, they like 12 quirky answers Dylan says to weird
Yeah.
we've seen them all before. Like, how
Yeah.
many protester singers are there? He goes, well, there's 136. They go, well, no,
42.
somewhere between 136 and 142. But it's really smarmy and fun. But basically, they asked him once, "Are you a poet?" And he goes, "No, I'm a trapeze artist."
That's great.
But anyway, sorry to go on a tangent, but the Keith Richards Divine Rod is amazing. I didn't know that one, but it is this thing you said is so important to where we're going with this conversation is saying environment. So the second Turing question, and you'll see a lot of these things come back around.
Okay.
You go. The second Turing question is, can machines think?
Thinking. So we think, and we are basically taking the things that we are surrounding with ourselves with and trying to piece them together to inform a thought, opinion, or action, you could argue, or something. I don't know. I'm just making that up.
Yeah.
So machines, I mean, AI shows some learned behavior. If you give it a prompt and it says something, and then it gives you two options, and it says which one is preferable to you, and you press this one, and then it starts adapting that answer in the future. So it's learned something.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's think as we like to have in our brain, but if you pull out the concept of what's happening when we think, maybe machines do think, and it may be a lowercase t, and maybe a different kind of think than what we think. But I would have to lean that there you might be able to argue that they do. Yeah.
Really good, Robert. That's super, because you really brought up this dichotomy. Like, a lot of my questions are whatever they call false dichotomies or whatever. You can't say that from that, but you sort of separated there learned and thinking. Learned, that's what we go to school in America. We learn shit and then we repeat it back to the teacher, and he goes, okay, you learned it. Okay, thank you. Next. So do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Meaning, happiness. Okay. Everyone, joy of life, pursuit of happiness. Meaning, what do things mean? This is a tricky one, isn't it? It's I'm stumbling on this one a little bit. You would like to think that it's happiness, and that what is it that I heard that someone said that I think that liberals prefer to be right than to see results or something like that. That in other words, you would prefer to be right about something than something that might be wrong but has better results, right? Which is a fascinating thing to think about.
Wait, finish that line again. Liberals prefer to be right than what?
Than results driven. They favor being right to results. So even if it is right in some great moral scheme of things, but this policy doesn't lead to any results, you could argue, they prefer that method. And I understand, I have a lot of probably trappings with this, to be right versus the results. And so for some reason, I think about that when I think about happiness and meaning. Happiness is a state, it's an individual state of feeling.
Yeah.
We often equate it to ourselves. We can only scale it in terms of how we feel. Of course, if you see a child happy, it brings you happiness. But again, you're only measuring it through your own happiness, so to speak.
Yeah.
Meaning is something that you feel like you theoretically, the meaning of life, or the, some kind of, the force of gravity or something you could argue as some kind of meaning, or I'm looking at truth, which maybe isn't the same, that could affect many people and that could be measured on a greater scale. I'm maybe reading too much into it.
No, you're doing good.
I think I go for meaning more.
You
But
go what?
I think I lean to meaning in my life,
Yeah.
to the detriment of happiness at times. And
Well,
so that's why I grapple with this.
Well, here's where I got it, because you can react and suss it out more, Robert. And that is Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. He says happiness doesn't tend to last, and
Okay.
meaning tends to last.
There you go. That's
So
good.
is that a value judgment? Well, I want some, like this guy actually yesterday. You would love this guy. He just wrote a book on Jesse Ed Davis, Douglas Miller, and he brought up eating an ice cream cone. And I goes, that's amazing, because I use that as an example.
Yeah.
Me and you could each have an ice cream cone and we're eating it, and we're having a good time, and it tastes good, and the cone's going to end. But the experience of eating it with the other person, the meaning might last forever.
It's this. Okay. It's really warm in here, but this gives me some immediate gratification.
Yes.
Rather than figuring out like why why is it warm in here? Is there something I can do? I just look for the brief, cooling,
Because
becomes more fun.
Yeah, everybody's watching the Super Bowl and your air conditioning power's out because they're sucking the electricity out. So that was good. Now, does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it, or more so creating it?
Ooh, that's a good one. There are times that you create consciousness, I think, or that you can lose it. Like I said, I recently turned off all social media. I got rid of Facebook years ago, Twitter a couple years ago, and recently Instagram, because I realized that I sucked myself into it, and I was watching funny dog videos and interviews with secondary rock stars from the late 70s and interested in them. And then I would pull it down, and I realized that I was just a passenger of some kind of algorithm, that it was directing essentially what I was feeding my body with, and that my consciousness was completely beheld to that, and to the point that I did not know where I was or how long I had been in that rabbit hole. Did I lose consciousness? Weirdly. I don't know. It depends on how you really look at what consciousness is, but I do think we can take a more active role in being present, which is a very popular thing to think about these days as we become distracted with all these options. To become truly present, I do kind of see overlapping with being actively conscious and creating consciousness for yourself. And I don't know if that's the correct answer, but it's something that I feel or think about, and think increasingly.
Yeah. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
What is speed of light? Is that 3.8 million miles per second or squared or something like that?
Yeah.
So that's space. That is distance, tangible distance. Thought doesn't have distance, does it? So thought is playing by a whole different set of rules.
Yeah.
Thought feels to me like a 4-dimension compared to a 3-dimension or something. So I haven't thought about this before, but I mean, thought, sometimes I think that thoughts are there and we discover them. So there's this thought sitting there and it's like, oh, and so it was already there, you know? So I feel it almost defies, in some cases, can defy time, but it certainly can defy spatial distance, unlike light. So I'm going to go with thought on this one.
Dude, there's no right or wrong answers to any of these questions, but that one you got right, Robert.
That's good. I want some Jerry points. That's good.
Audre Lorde, the poet, said you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Rainer, her colleague, said, oh, you can if you expose the tools.
Okay.
What new tool do you suggest?
Okay. So a house is built like a piece of art is built, or the Dylan song is built. And so I'm often trying to deconstruct them to understand how to build something myself, and to read a Murakami short story and understand when he introduces these weird, surreal things that happen and why it affects me. Because then I can understand how to build a different house, so to speak, for myself.
Yeah.
So I think that whether or not it is the same tool as they, in a way it is. It's imagination. And so it's like in creation. And so it's like that to me is how I learn. And it's not emulating or replicating what's already there, but trying to figure out the things that speak to me in a way that I can, and I should do this more, but like absolutely deconstructing to rebuild, to understand a template that can be replicated in a different, unique way, hopefully to myself, or put it into a different place. So I have some guide forward to create things. Maybe I'm getting away from your question.
No, you said the tool is imagination. You really summed up my attraction to your Zappa video, because I was laughing so hard. You know, I told you all this. When I saw your Zappa video, I laughed so hard when you did your kazoo line. I said, I've got to know who this guy is and how he came up with this, and deconstruct in order to understand. It wasn't that, dude, you're full of shit. The kazoo is a great instrument and I love it, and it should be in rock music. Another friend of mine, after I told him about our discussion, said, a kazoo's not an instrument. Anybody can play. I says, are you kidding me? Kazoos are important. I blow a kazoo into water and it causes a different. I do this over it, so it does the wah-wah sound like a harmonica. Excellent. You can be skilled. I mean, you know, Temple City Kazoo Band played Whole Lot of Love and then released it, and Dr. Demento used to play it. that legitimizes kazoos and rock right there, dude.
It's no doubt that it's an instrument. And it doesn't matter. It does not matter if it's difficult or easy to play. Is absolutely beside the point.
Yeah, but it is just the fact that you said you don't. It was your facial expression. You don't have kazoos, because it's also. I mean, have you seen the Dylan film when he buys the siren whistle? You know, that is to me one of the best moments in the film, because I've used siren whistles my whole life playing in bands, but I go, I want one of those the really good ones now. And then I looked it up, it's like $40 online. I goes, well, but anyway, sorry to go on a tangent, but that was good. You got the idea, the tool. Okay, now what new toy do you suggest?
Toy. A number of years ago, I was writing an article about why we travel. And I started thinking about travel as play. Now, when we're kids, we play. We know how we use our imagination to create worlds. We use instruments, meaning toys or whatever, things laying around in an imaginative way. We assign a different meaning to them to build some kind of narrative or a little event that we play with. And as adults, we forget to play. And, you know, we go to work, we pay bills, we eat, we put kids to bed. If we have kids, we go, you know, we watch Netflix. And where is the play? But the only time that we suspend our day-to-day reality is when we travel. We go to places where you're eating different things. You're listening to different language. Some cases we go to museums. People don't go to even museums at home. We fill our mind with possibility because we have the entire day anchored in complete openness. We walk. We go to museums. We see art. We do things. We talk to people. We try to stumble with language. And I call it play. So if there's a toy that I think that people should think about is putting yourself into something unfamiliar. It goes back to the bus. That's the ultimate toy. But don't forget as an adult that we can still play.
That is a great answer. Unfamiliarity is your answer, is the toy. Okay. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Can I sleep through the night? You know, I have increasing insomnia, and I kind of don't even mind it anymore. I don't really worry necessarily too much at night. I worry enough during the day. You know, I really don't think I worry that much. Maybe I used to. And I have all kinds of things that I could worry about, but I don't really at night. I just hope that I can sleep pretty well.
Robert McLuhan learned from the poet Ezra Pound that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, so we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. So I ask you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
I hope the artists are. And sometimes art isn't, you know, sometimes it's just a pretty picture, you know, sometimes it's a song with a good beat. But I think Americans understand why art exists probably less than a lot of places. I remember going to, I wish I could remember this installation artist that I saw in Guanajuato, Mexico. Colored sands displayed, an American, I forgot who it was, unfortunately. Just weird installations, weird in the sense that it wasn't a painting on the wall. It was something using different objects laid out in a very imaginative way. And I remember going through, and there was a number of women, Mexican women in line in front of me, and they were not speaking Spanish. So they were of some indigenous group in that area of central Mexico, presumably. And watching them marvel at this very cutting edge modern art. I don't know what its purpose was. I don't remember very much about it. It's been quite a while, but I remember their reaction to it. And I've thought a lot about that. And I've thought about how seeing their enjoyment of it made me enjoy that time with it a lot more. So if this artist, I want to say it was Robert Wilson, if that makes sense, was this artist was saying something, and I'll admit that I missed it. I don't remember anymore what it was. It isn't that important to me because it was that daring and pluck and gall to use something in a very different way that opens up kind of how you see things. And when you see people with talk about language, completely inability to communicate with them, we kind of connected in a way with that experience. But it also made me think that other countries get it more. I kind of think that the equivalent of these two women, and I hate to say this, but in the United States, would probably not react as favorably, if I may say so, to it. And I think that we don't take art as serious. We don't know what it's for. We push it off to something. We don't fund it. And, you know, one of the reasons why English bands were so good in the 60s, Stones, Beatles, Kinks, Who, all of them went to art school. All of them understood how to use pop art ideas and Warhol and whatever you want to say and put it into the pop music format that pretty much everyone that was in the music industry thought it was a fad and silly. English were uniquely positioned to do that. And then the Americans started to catch up. Dude, I'm sorry, I'm on a wild tangent.
No, Robert, I wish, we should do a salon with Doug Miller. I mean, he's really a great historian who wrote this book on a rock god who's kind of suppressed and not known about. Jesse Davis played with Dylan, Jackson Brown, everybody, all the Beatles, blah, blah, blah. But it's so much going back to what I talked to him about yesterday, because at one point I literally said something I have. It's an unfair bias. And I goes, I hate all the fucking rock stars who went to art school. and what you said was, shut the fuck up, Jerry. He just articulated something that's really important, that eventually I go, well, I make one exception, as I love Laurie Anderson. And she is an artist who kind of snuck into being a rock star.
True.
And she,
from the art world.
And in the long run, she, so it was funny that you said that, because it was exactly on my mind, because I know it's unfair. It doesn't matter. These people, like I said, Pete Townsend learned how to destroy his guitar from his art teacher, who was a performance artist. I mean, that was in the New York Times obit on him. And it was like, see, he did. So anyways, that was really important to me, what you said, because it is an awareness that, what I'm asking is, why do we ignore? Well, not everybody ignores what artists are saying. And so you learn it from, like, your environment. I do that often. I see what other people, like the line, I don't know what I think until I, fill in the blank. I go, I don't know what I think until I ask someone else what they think. So I'll know what I could possibly think.
Possibility is important.
Yeah. And so that was really fun. And I wanted to tell you what your answer and discussion really evoked was, one of McLuhan's favorite lines is, the Balinese have no word for art. They do everything as well as they can. Okay. So then, well, if you're just doing what you do, then what are you going to ignore? Why are we going to ignore the artist? Everything is just there, because Joseph Boyce says everybody's an artist. The garbage man, the shoe shine guy, everybody is an artist, in their own way. So everybody's revealing the hidden psychic effects of our inventions all the time. But we do tend to go, well, I don't want to know that. I don't want to know, Waymos have taken over my hometown of Venice. So there's these cars driving around our town doing research and development, and no one's in the car.
Right.
I'm like, dude, you should be driving homeless people and elders to the doctor's appointments. They should be but maybe they, and then you wonder, what the heck? What is the hidden thing here? Why should I be angry? One guy I asked, what's your reaction to Waymos? He goes, they drive a lot safer than all the stupid human drivers. And, one drove by me the other day, and I kind of put my hand out to see if the hand would make it kind of stop. And it didn't, because I wasn't really in its way. But it is like there's a hidden psychic effect going there, because you look and you go, there's no one in that car, no one. And you go, wait, am I safe? And it's like, yeah, you're safer than sorry to go on a rant. So
I sure hope those machines can think.
That's back to okay. Now, Robert, do artists have moral obligation?
Moral obligation. Well, I went to an exhibit of art from Pompeii that was visiting the United States a year or two ago. And in it, there were fruit on a plate. There was little landscape scenes and just little charming things. So it's art for art's sake, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't trying to tell you something in any particular, it wasn't trying to guide behavior. It wasn't trying to model behavior.
Yeah.
It was putting something on the wall that gave a little bit of delight. and
Yeah.
that's okay. I don't know that the artist has a moral obligation any more than a human has a moral obligation, but it often can. And Laurie Anderson, you mentioned, and Laurie Anderson is a perfect example of an artist as an antenna. Perfect example of that. Maybe the greatest.
Yeah.
Is it a moral obligation that guides her there, or is it just her as a human finding a way to express herself that she wants to? I don't know. To talk to Laurie Anderson, but it's like, I don't think that they have to have a moral obligation. There's a lot of artists that are repugnant people. I mean, Hemingway could sure write a sentence, but he was a jerk.
Yeah.
But does that matter? Was he trying to give some sense of how to live, or in a way in his art that was different than him as the person too? I don't know. But I think that you can't have a pretty picture on the wall or a song that just makes you feel good only because it makes you want to dance, right?
Yeah.
Does Wild Thing, the song, have a moral obligation? Does the solo in Led Zeppelin's Leonard Skinner's Freebird have a moral obligation? No, not really. I don't particularly like Leonard Skinner, but sorry.
It's like anyways, it's funny you brought up that song, because if you watch, have you seen the Muscle Shoals documentary?
Yes, I have.
And you see the black female vocalist, it's Mary Clayton, or one of the greats, saying, "We didn't realize these guys had a Confederate flag in back of us."
Right.
But anyways, are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Ideas. Are ideas new? I mean, maybe it's just application that's new. I mean, are there new ideas? I guess so. I guess, but maybe it's just more application that you're worried about. Just how things are. Like, is there something that I could create that wasn't pondered on the rocky shoreline with the Mediterranean waves splashing against it in 5000 BC? Is there? I don't know. I think that one of the things I would say is I find that people that refuse any change and people who want complete change now are sort of the same.
Yeah.
It's too much.
Yeah.
So too much new idea or change or application versus old and just being immobile and not change are both equally selfish and unhelpful. And so I don't know how to differentiate between new and old there.
Yeah.
But you want things to move and evolve, and you want to be a little cautious and not do too much too fast, I guess.
Oh, Robert, it's amazing because I dropped the quotes after the question, and I got to tell you them now because they're both applicable with what you just said. John Cage: "I can't understand why people are afraid of new ideas. I'm afraid of the old ones." And then Charles Kettering: people are very open-minded about new things, as long as they're exactly like the old ones." So, can you conjure up your earliest memory ever, or one of them?
Think. It's like there were. I remember remembering. At this point in life, and but I remember remembering a scene in a dark room, and it feels like that I was on a sofa, probably on my mom's lap, and watching someone on TV. And over time, I have believed, for whatever reason, that's Lyndon Johnson. And I have no idea if that's true.
Yeah.
But I don't know why it would have been kicking around for so long in my life.
Yeah.
And you almost imagine that you were crying in the middle of the night. You got up, they put on the TV in a dark room. It feels dark. And you're watching something. Maybe he's announcing he's not running for re-election or something like that. Or maybe it's just a random thing. But I used to think that. And that's the one I would say. But again, it feels like a memory of a memory of a memory at this point.
Yeah. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Well, we talk about, that learned behavior, and, how we gather information so that it hopefully adds up to something on that, Oliver Wendell Holmes. So there's a quote from him, that Supreme Court justice. I hope I'm getting his name correct. And he had retired. He's at home, and someone visits, and he has all these books out, like the most intense Latin and things underlined and notes there. And then someone said, "What are you doing? You're 96 years old. Why are you sitting there?" He said, "To improve my mind."
Yeah.
And I think that I forgot the question. I hope that it's connected to that. What was the question again?
It is memory more a curse
Yeah.
or more a blessing? Yeah.
Memory is a blessing because you are acquiring things. You can have something horrible that happens to you, and I would never want to forget, or mourning a loved one. You would never want to forget this. It justifies life to feel that. And where does this all lead if not from memory? So I can only see it as a blessing.
Tell me someone within your immediate family who had an impact on you, and what specifically was that impact?
A lot, I mean, it's interesting. When my daughter was born, she's 16. And so almost immediately you see her and you go, a lot of people think of like, oh, you see yourself in this little creature, and that you realize, oh, okay, oh my gosh, she looks like, oh, my mom. I see patterns that in me and her. But what I like and what I've learned from her is how much of her I have in me.
Yeah.
And I will think of myself as doing something like Ruby does. And that was the great realization, is that it's not one way,
That's so heavy.
Mm-hmm.
That is amazing. It's really beautiful what you just said. So the same question outside your immediate family, someone who had an impact on you, and what was that impact?
It's endless, isn't it? I mean, impact, man. Where would I begin? Where do you begin with this? It goes to, it goes to the Dylan quote you said of like, how many protest singers are there? 142 or 167?
Yeah.
In a way, that example that you brought up earlier is it. I mean, you think about, Woody Allen films and how much they impacted me when I was first exposed to them, and as a way of articulating yourself and just kind of not taking yourself too seriously. But the Dylan quote, that Dylan thing was the first thing I thought of, for maybe because it's fresh in mind. And Dylan's endless conversation about, I love his cheekiness. I love that he's elusive. He looks like Buster Keaton to me. I think that someone said
that's a good thing. We don't need no stinking words from Dylan.
Yeah.
But
very funny.
It's so intense, because I might have told you this. My favorite is Dylan stole from the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ever tell anyone everything you know. So I know if me and you met at a cocktail party, and we didn't know each other at all through podcasts or anything, we'd start talking, and I eventually would go, Robert, I want to know everything you know, because I want to tell you everything I know. So we can like exchange. And I mean, Woody's the same way. It's sort of like both those guys are classic Woody. But if you had to summarize, cheekiness, what would you say? Cheekiness, what did you get from Dylan? Cheekiness. I mean,
it's like I saw an interview with him, and the guy's talking to him. Dylan clearly doesn't want to be there, and Neil Young's next to him. He said, "So, Bob, tell us, what are you up to next?" He said, "I'm going to let Neil handle this." And so he hands it out to Neil, and they said, Neil has to answer the question. It's not taking yourself so serious. It's a little bit elusive. It's understanding the absurdity of a moment and giving it back. And I
Yeah.
find that, I think it's okay when you're having a conversation that's real with someone to tell them anything that you
Yeah.
can. I'm not, we always guard things whether we mean to or not,
Yeah.
but I don't think that I try to hide certain things. But in that context, polite society, someone, sternly looking at you with a microphone,
Yeah.
you can play there. And
Yeah.
Dylan knows that well.
You
It
know,
was
you got to see the interview that Zappa had to do in Toronto, where they said, "Will you interview yourself?"
okay, good.
Because he was the one who said, "This is like the Inquisition," but his interviews are part of his music. They're
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, there's one link on YouTube. You can watch 10 hours of Zappa interview. And they're really good. But Frank's interviewing himself. So, on
Good.
one shot, he has sunglasses on, and the other he doesn't. And he goes, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, blah, blah, blah. And then as the interviewer, he goes, fascinating. And then Frank answers another question, and he takes his glasses off again, and he goes, extremely fascinating.
That's great. That's great.
It
I can't
is
think of anyone better to do that than Frank Zappa.
right.
He seems perfect.
But the thing about Dylan there, I says he's elusive. He does. There's some amazing,
Oh yeah.
really great
Oh yeah.
Dylan. That one where he's at Hearts of Fire,
Yeah.
set,
Oh yeah.
and he's in the trailer and he's
Fantastic.
drawing.
Mhm.
That 10 minutes, I've shown that at all my Dylan events
That's
over and over.
Fantastic.
Okay, so did your parents raise you a particular religion?
We went to a Presbyterian church. I think I grew up in Tulsa, and Tulsa is a pretty conservative place. And I had a friend on the other side of the block. They were evangelical. And I went over, and I didn't know what that meant, about fourth grade. And I remember at one point, kind of as the sun starts to fall and dusk comes, and Tim has to leave the room to do something, and his mom comes in and says to me, Robert, you know that you're going to hell. Now, as an adult figure saying this, that was really weird. And I went back thinking I'd done something wrong, and I never told my parents this. And I thought about this for quite some time. And at a certain point, I realized for myself, and I've never wavered on this, no one goes to hell. There's no hell.
Yeah.
And I gave myself, good for me, the confidence to feel that I wasn't internally damned because I went to Tim's house, or that we went to the wrong church. And so I have been really at odds with that kind of religion, due not to the church I went to, but kind of the environment that I was in, or on the same street, so to speak, early on.
Do you pray?
What's pray? What is pray?
What is pray? Yeah, that's good.
What is pray? I try to rally myself, and I rally myself in different ways. Is that praying? So, like, for no reason, like a couple years ago, I was invited to play baseball, and I haven't played baseball since I was sixth grade. Didn't know how to swing a bat, and I tried to learn how to swing a bat. I'm the oldest person by 20 years on this team. The last game before I moved back to Oregon, it was in Oklahoma. I was there for a little bit. I was playing, and we were playing against a team that was far better than us, and we were losing badly. And it was the last inning. We had one person on base. We were down by 6 runs or something, 2 outs. And I'm batting, me? Yeah. Okay, 2 immediate strikes. Then I sit there, and I don't like this pitcher. And the pitcher was kind of a jerk. He was throwing a little too hard for this kind of like amateur game. He was like played in college or something. And I stepped away from the batter, the plate for a second. I said, this is probably the last time you're going to be playing a sporting event in your life. Last time probably ever going to hold a baseball bat. Let's hit this guy. Let's hit this out. Let's do it. And I got a hit. I got a single. Was that praying? I wanted it, and I rallied myself on an internal level. I feel, and I could have very easily struck out, but I got it on. And then we lost the game. It was fine. But it was more personal.
Yeah.
Is that prayer?
Yeah.
Maybe.
That verb is amazing. Rally.
Yeah.
Rally. rally myself is a really good rewording. I appreciate that, Robert, because it is like, is praying talking to yourself? Yes.
Yeah.
You know, that Ruling Class movie, you know, with Peter O'Toole, and he thinks he's God, and he goes, yeah, every time I pray, I find I'm talking to myself.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good way of looking at it. You're right. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
You know,
No, I think rallying
also,
myself is prayer. That's what you do. You're rallying yourself. Yeah.
I'll say another thing about this. One of the things I like to do also to rally myself to create things is to tell myself I can't, and to create enemies, to create villains.
Wow.
I create villains in my life. A number of years ago, when it was really easy to make a blog, I made a blog called The Failed Bands of Oklahoma. And I'm not convinced that it's my favorite thing. And it was going to be trying to create a great showcase to failure in the Oklahoma Panhandle, and trying to get failed bands and failed magicians and failed hula hoop performers and trapeze artists together to go to the Panhandle of Oklahoma and have a great showcase of failure. This is all fictions. You know, there was nothing. It was never going to happen. And then I created this blog, and I had like an audience of like 20, and I had a great time doing it. This is, I don't know, 18 years ago. So then I created another blog called the Kansas Bands of the Past that attacked my blog, attacked relentlessly. Now, the 20 people, including one of my friends, my best friends, thought it was real. And they got mad at Kansas Bands and the Bands of the Past. To this day, I have no idea. So creating a villain in a weird sense was a way of rallying.
Yeah.
I don't know how I'm saying that Kansas Band of the Past is prayer, but in a way, it was trying to create, and I've done this just mentally, like imagine someone that says you can't do it so that you can. And it's about rallying, and it's the same talking to yourself in a weird way by creating this character that's sometimes useful for me. Maybe it's unhealthy, I don't know.
It's really heavy what you're saying. You know, Doug just put on a concert at the Dillon Museum in Tulsa with Jackson Browne and Taj Mahal doing a tribute to Jesse Ed Davis. And there's a huge exhibit. There's so many connects. I'm blown away. And then, you know, the first record I produced was Dwayne Bailey, who's from Kansas, who went on to play with Bob Seger. Then he played with Chicago, and he's an unknown Kansas rock star. You know, he's an amazing guitarist. So that's so. But the next question in this, first of all, you completely anticipated the next question to. I mean, you have ESP to pinpoint like laser. But before we do that one, if God does exist, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Oh, you know, it's just so beyond the realm of possibility to me that I can't even imagine the scene. It's like, you know, there's nothing to forgive, you know. Welcome, you know. I mean, it's just like just a sense of absolute peace. And here is the 1963 Volkswagen that you had when you were 16 and that got ruined in the flood when you were 17. Here it is. You can use this. You can use this wonderful car again.
There you go. That's what I want. Robert, I get too many people going, you did a good job and welcome. I like a little creative, like back to your tool imagination. Like, here's your car, you know.
Yeah, I want the car. I want the car. And, you know, and I want a Mountie hat, and, you know, and I want some fritters to eat. That's what I want. Yeah, I'm going to make demands. That's what I want. Just joking. I'm going to get in trouble now.
Yeah, you know, okay, so here, before we go into the question you anticipated with your ESP, is two little anecdotes really fast. Paul Krasner tells this joke I repeat all the time. The kid is up to bat at Little League.
Okay.
And he looks up and he goes, please, God, let me hit a home run.
Yes, I know that feeling.
And the pitcher is doing the same thing. He looks up to God and says,
Okay.
please, God, let me strike him out.
Mhm.
In the clouds part, and God's voice goes, "You superstitious fools."
That's great.
Then the guy goes to hell,
Mm.
and Saint Pete is there, and he peeks in and he goes, "Oh, you've got Robert's record corner in hell?" And
Mm.
the devil goes, "That's all we got." Now, we could flip it the other way, and you
Yeah,
go to heaven, and Saint Pete is there at heaven's gates, and you peek in and you go, "You got Robert's record corner in heaven?" And they go, "That's all we got."
that's funny. That's great.
Okay, so here's the question you anticipated.
Either is flattering, by the way.
Yeah, right. What difference does it make? Heaven, hell, it doesn't matter. Okay. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
I don't know that evil can be personified like that. I think that people are responding to the environment that they're in, and so that
Yeah.
it goes back to being fourth grade and believing that hell doesn't exist. It doesn't mean that evil things don't happen, but that if you deconstruct someone doing horrible things, there are reasons for it. That can allow for some empathy, even if it doesn't excuse whatever act it was. It can lead to
Yeah.
some understanding. I don't believe that it is an innate quality, necessarily. I think that it's something that happens through our unfortunate things in life that can lead to hurt others, and sometimes people don't know they're doing it, or there's some deficiency that they're aware of doing it and they thrive off it.
Yeah.
In a way, I ultimately don't blame the person for it.
Oh, that's a high quality. It's taking the sinner from the sin.
Yeah.
You mean, yeah,
I mean, it doesn't mean that I'm not mad if something happens to me or to my,
yeah,
someone I know. I'll be mad about it. I'll say something about it.
yeah,
But it doesn't mean that evil is a bad. I don't like that. I don't like that word evil. I don't like axis of evil.
yeah,
And saying that, that journalists are what was that, the evil,
yeah,
I said it earlier, I forgot. I don't like the word. It's not to
yeah,
be thrown around lightly,
yeah.
I feel.
Well, the hidden question really is,
Mm.
how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set it up. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
Oh,
Coppola stole from the samurai and the mob. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
yeah.
J- JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of prompts. The basic question is, how do
Okay.
you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower him.
What's acknowledge mean?
Yeah,
Acknowledge.
yeah,
It's like, you are my enemy. You are great. You are overwhelming to me.
yeah,
I'd have to think about that, because he's smarter than I am, and there's a reason to it. But my initial reaction is, how do you acknowledge? How do you? What's your question? How do you what with the enemy?
How do you advise? Like, if your daughter came home and says, someone's bullying me, how would
Mhm.
you advise her?
Head on. Now, head on can be a lot of things. It could be that smile to the clerk that doesn't understand you through
Yeah,
language. It
yeah,
could be forceful comments in defense of yourself. It could be, in some cases,
yeah,
standing up for yourself.
yeah,
But I think that is an acknowledgement. It is an acknowledgement that they're superior, or that you can't, that it defines you.
yeah,
And often we are around little enemies and little things that we don't like, and little things that we feel lack moral obligation.
yeah,
And what we do, you don't want to have a confrontation every single time, because it manifests to bigger things. So sometimes you could head on approach this enemy without the enemy knowing it.
yeah,
And it may be a choice of living apart from that, but in a way that is an acknowledgement to some degree, and how it affects you. I like creating little enemies, like I said, or little villains, I call them. The little
yeah,
villains. I like having the little villains because I know how to use them in a way. I
Yeah.
know how to, we are built on conflict. Everything that we watch or read is based on conflict, and conflict and things brushing up against each other combust into something, and it could be of interest or it could be creating something. And so little villains sometimes are a good thing. I like constraints in life. I
Yeah.
like to know where the barriers are so I know what to rebel against a little bit, or to push up against. So I don't mind that. I don't want to if it's a world without conflict, it might be harmonious to some degree, but it also could be boring. I don't know that you create things without it. So I don't mind little villains. Now, if
Yeah.
someone's bullying her, well, that's got to stop, and at the
Yeah.
same point, I want to make sure that someone understands that does not define them, that they're saying these things or having others say things or whatever it is, and hopefully not physical. That doesn't define you, but let's figure out a way out of this, because that would be very hard to hear, as a parent,
Yeah.
So
Well,
a lot of things.
here's the follow-up, because you again anticipated the follow-up, Robert. Nassim Taleb said games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, we don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is. My friend said, well, villains don't think they're bad. They want control. Heroes want freedom. And Gregory Bateson says, when the criminal gets caught, does he go, whoa, my criminal skills went up to snuff that day? Or does he go, oh, I did something morally and socially wrong? So again, it's a lot of prompts and you can go wherever you want, but the basic question is, does punishment work?
Oh. Punishment. The goal of punishment is someone did something, we don't want them to do it again. Well, I would like to think that's the goal. I don't know that it is the goal sometimes in our punitive systems that we have. And, and the amount of people that we have incarcerated in this country is far greater than, any country in Europe, for example. Is that the intent of reform? Is it an intent to actually influence and have lives that have gone astray or didn't have everything led up the right way so that they can lead more productive lives that doesn't harm others? Of course, then you have drugs that often doesn't harm others. So I don't know. I would like to think that our goal for punishment is to for someone to learn what their behavior was damaging, and that they can be better. Right?
Yeah.
I think there's a video somewhere. If I remember correctly, I may have this a little bit wrong, of some Swedish tourists in New York on the subway, and someone was getting violent on the subway. And someone filmed this, and the Swedish tourists were actually police. And they were able to calmly de-escalate this without any violence whatsoever, and just very, very calmly de-escalate the anger and whatever was happening. It's been a while since I've seen that. So they were, in a way, on a micro level, able to reform this person's behavior without severe punishment.
Yeah.
Maybe they were understanding and listening and able to deflate that emotion. So, I don't know how this gets into heroes and all this kind of stuff, but, heroes is a fun word to think about. What are heroes, for heaven's sake? I mean, I love the heroes that Bowie comes up with in that song, and I've thought about it a lot. They go and hold hands in front of the wall and get shot, and that's heroic, and they're failures, so it isn't about winning or losing, so to speak.
Yeah.
But that's different than punishment, I guess. I don't know. Yeah,
well, you're a good listener, because someone told me, dude, your quotes have nothing to do with your question. And so I've been trying to work on how to rephrase that whole combination of thought, because the hero's journey and all that was important. And you saying, I create villains, I create enemies. That in the whole thing you said, conflict is like the human condition. That's a huge thing in my discussion group. So I
Mm.
appreciated what you just said there. But there's one line I learned from a political activist that you evoked is when you're on a protest and the cops are there and it's the protesters versus the cops, you chant to the cops, give the cops a raise, give the cops a raise. Like, how in the fuck are they ever gonna beat the shit out of you when you're yelling, give me, hey, you're right. I won't beat you up.
That's great.
So
And
James
you
Joyce,
probably could get the police to empathize with your position after doing that.
yeah,
Because, this
exactly.
is what the Swedish cops were doing in a way. It's
That's
like giving something a little bit,
yeah,
listening, helping, thinking of that person, and then moving it. And you could probably find common ground easier.
common ground. You're a good listener because that is what um uh a kid who taught me jujitsu, or he told me in jujitsu or the art of war, is the great warriors don't even fight the fight. They know how to de-escalate, so you don't even have, they win by not even having a warfare,
Hmm.
you know. So like that's pretty heavy. But James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin about 100 years ago, and he basically checked out. He said, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree?
Okay.
Years later, Faulkner said sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
What I would say to Joyce is, what do you think of Marcel Duchamp? You can see a urinal if you go piss in it, right? But you take the urinal and you put it in a gallery and you write fountain on it, and it changes what we see of art and what we see of things. He redefined this object.
Redefine,
He
yeah.
redefined it. He redefined what art is. I think Duchamp has, there's a quote about what art is, and I wrote it up on my wall at one point. I don't remember it specifically, but it was something like, art is the missing gap. It's everything that you don't see.
Yeah.
And I love that idea. And so I think that Joyce was off on that one. I do. Because, yeah, you can go see a tree. Now, it sounds like you're seeing a really bad film, but a
Yeah.
film can show a tree. Did you see that movie, Wim Wenders with Perfect Days, recently?
No, I want to. I know
So
about it.
it's a fantastic film. And so part of it is, every day this guy is set up in a routine and he gets out, and every day he has lunch at this, he cleans toilets, speaking of toilets.
Yeah.
But every day he goes and he carries an old camera, a point shoot camera with film, and he just kind of takes pictures up of trees, right?
Oh,
Without
really?
looking, without looking. And then, and you see a series of his days, and he goes and he gets the film developed, and he goes through the photos of the trees that he takes. And he just quickly rips some in half, and others he puts in a little tin box, and he marks the day that he shot them. And find out later in the film that he's looking about the way the light goes through trees, and he's looking for a specific thing. So this is a case where his film is about the effort of trying to show something that we are around all the time in a very poetic and meaning and impactful way. So I think Joyce is wrong about the tree, but it sounds like he saw a bad film about a tree, because there could be a time when it's better to go see the tree.
Well,
But
well,
if the
first of
film is
all,
good, it will make
yeah.
us see the tree differently, right?
Dude,
So take that, James Joyce.
yeah. Womp on that sucker, dude. But all the Joyce scholars say Joyce never did that. He fucking quit the cinema because it was losing money. But somewhere in my Joyce study, someone said that, so I repeat it. And one guy says, you should add the word allegedly. It sounds more dynamic if I just say Joyce said that, but he allegedly, he probably didn't even say it. But also, he's writing books. What's the difference if you're describing a tree in a book? But anyways, it makes the point. But Faulkner's point restates it. Like sometimes fiction is more true than journalism.
Well, people say that it's harder to write nonfiction, so they write fiction because you can tell a story and
Yeah,
convey a mood and things, and you're not be held to by things that happen, because things that happen are often less interesting. You know,
yeah,
there's a freedom in it, but also ideally, you know, it goes into realism. I think there's nothing wrong with realism. And, you know, you paint the water bottle exactly like
yeah,
that doesn't look anything like that. Yeah, exactly. Isn't that great? You know, to reinterpret this
yeah,
ultimately is where it gets most interesting, you know.
yeah. That's like Godard saying Hollywood movies are documentaries of actors acting.
Excellent.
But I loved it. I mean, Duchamp, Joyce, McLuhan, and Zapp are my main person. So anyone who spits back a Duchamp to me, that's like, oh man, you hit pay dirt, dude. That was the most amazing. There's a
Jerry
book.
points. I got Jerry points.
Yeah, I wanna run in the other room and get it, but I won't. But you know the Taschen book on alchemy and mysticism. Have you? Oh, look at it. I'm sure you got it there at Powell's, or you can see it. The last page in the book is a quote from Finnegan's Wake and a picture of a piece of Duchamp art. And it is like the epitome of my life. Like, boom, they just put them juxtaposed it perfectly. So
Yeah.
there is you can, if you Google Joyce and Duchamp, you can get this huge document of how they influenced each other. They were
Interesting.
both in Paris at the same time,
Uh-huh.
you know, and it's really heavy. There's a lot of joy. There's a lot of Duchamp reference, not a lot. There's Duchamp references in the Wake,
Hmm.
but you know, you taught me this thing about the Wim Wenders that was really heavy because I've had problems with Wim Wenders. I know he's a great filmmaker. I've loved a lot of his films, but I met him and we brought him to campus at University of Michigan in the 70s.
Hmm.
And I went, and he's a lover of American rock and roll. He loves
Hmm.
American rock.
Hmm.
And we went away calling him, instead of Wim Wenders, we called him One Wonders.
That's funny. That's
But
funny.
he is, you know, because we brought Herzog, him to
Yeah.
campus.
Mm.
But you know, the other one we didn't bring was Fassbinder. I mean, that is a huge trio of
Yeah.
Germans
Mhm.
making films
Mhm.
affecting Americans. You know,
I
big
just saw
time.
Alice in the Cities again. It had been a
Very,
long time since I've seen it. It's just fantastic.
yeah.
I really enjoyed that a
No,
lot.
that's good. And that's what I need when I abandon people and say I hate them, then I need someone to say why they are valid so I can refresh my bias. Like, quit
Mhm.
hating that shit, you know, just get over it, you know.
Sometimes we don't have to like the artist to appreciate the art,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
maybe it's that case. I don't know. I don't know.
So Robert, walk us through where is your tipping point where you say, well, I want to be a writer. Did you grow up reading and then somewhere along the line you went, oh, I can do this? Like, where's that kind of, what'd you study in high school and college? And then where was the writing tipping point?
You know, the tipping point is always ahead, isn't it? You know, you never feel like you've arrived. You never feel satisfied with what you've done. You know, there's that you know, allegedly John Lennon said that life is what happens while you're making other plans.
Yeah.
And you realize, you know, the great thing, the great book, the great statement, the great thing that you know, that when I paint my masterpieces, Dylan says,
Yeah.
that hasn't, you don't feel like that's there yet, which is a good thing. You
Very
don't
good.
have it there. And so being a writer, capital W, I feel like I'm taking a writing class right now. You know, I feel
Yeah.
like, you know, to learn how to read, I'm still trying to learn how to read, and I'm
Yeah.
still
Me
trying to learn
too.
how to write, you know. And so I don't know when it was that I actively sought it in a weird way. I mean, I was writing for the high school paper. I was writing for the college paper. I studied journalism. I thought I was going to go pre-med for the first couple years in college. I don't know why I thought that. My dad was a doctor, so that's why I thought it. But
Yeah.
and then even when I got out of college, you know, you found ways to, you know, easy way out of doing jobs that weren't specifically writing or not rewarding writing, and you realize that ultimately It's that little time we have in life between your job and going to sleep, whatever,
Yeah.
or waking up in the morning, where you can do the things that are really meaningful to you. And it could be as silly as this Robert's Record Corner video thing that I'm doing. I'm still trying to find the form. And, you know, and I don't think this is an end all for me. It's just a means of trying to express myself and make sure that I am true to what I can create. But I'm not satisfied with any of it yet. So, you know, to being a writer, to being a creator, is an ongoing process, I feel.
No, that's good. You really explained it well. And then you found this niche, writing travel, and
Yeah.
you found a niche, I think, writing, you know, then you were a producer, PBS, or, you know, documentaries or whatever, producer, film, and then you write these cards for your, you know, the process of making your podcast is writing. I mean, you know, I have a script, the same thing for my question, but
Mhm.
I'm curious. A screenwriting teacher told me that great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process when you're writing?
Well, you know, I don't know what I think until I write. You know,
Yeah,
your intention can become, you know, can be revealed
yeah,
itself through the process, and also the intention of others. I don't always like it when it's very clear, but I also don't like it that it's impossible to sort out. You
yeah,
won't necessarily know the answer of why Duchamp, you know, we could all talk about why he wanted to put a toilet in a
yeah,
gallery. Maybe it's just a joke, you know,
yeah,
or maybe it is, you know, redefining what art is or redefining what
yeah,
toilets are.
yeah,
And That's where the fun is. That goes into his
yeah,
quote about the gaps, about everything you don't see. That's where the fun is. When you read a short story, they set up the character. And if they tell you every single thing about that, then you are a passive observer of the story.
yeah,
Is exactly everything they are. No, you know, when I listen to Blood on the Tracks by Dylan and you hear Tangled Up in Blue or Simple Twist of Fate, you can imagine these scenes. You imagine the smoke, you imagine the lights, you imagine the outside and the wet sidewalk. None of that's said, but he's
yeah,
giving me enough to paint a picture. And I like that active role with art, that his intention can be whatever it is. And ultimately, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even really matter because he's created something that I can now play with.
yeah,
And in terms of my own intention, you know, it goes back to that idea that when you write something or create something, that it finds its way and it speaks to you and it sometimes misguides you and you have to pull
yeah,
back a little bit. That intention sometimes is revealed. You start with a gut idea, a general notion, and your goal is to find something that says something that hasn't already been said 100 times, that you're adding to the conversation, not cluttering it. But
yeah.
that intention can't always be known when you have the blank page, I think, you know.
That's amazing because that's exactly you revived when I first encountered your videos, and then we had that first discussion. I went away and I started a folder, and I says, "This is I want to co-make a film with Robert because he's such a great editor and writer. I won't have to do so much work. I'll just feed him this idea." And it's
Yeah.
I think I already told you, but I want to summarize again. It's what Edgar Allan Poe discovered by inventing the detective novel is reasoning backwards. Effects precede causes. I'm only going to give them so much information, then the reader will go, wow, I know what's going to happen next. So it swoops
Right.
them into the experience. And then that spawned the symbolist, you know, all the great French poets who eventually spawned the rock poets. So all of them, Patti Smith, Bob Dylan, Jim Morrison, Kurt Cobain, all say they're symbolist wannabes, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and they know it. And that is Mallarmé, one of the best of them, saying, don't paint the painting, paint the effect you want to have on
Okay.
the painting. So, you know, the video I wanted in your um, thumbnail,
Mhm.
Symbolists spawn rock poets.
Okay.
Bombshell revelation. Family
Interesting.
finally. Robert, you'll love this. McLuhan said that the front page of the newspaper is the great American novel. That you
Okay.
can't write the great American novel. It's the front page of the newspaper. And I go, no, reinvent that. The great American novel is the thumbnail on a YouTube
Pretty
video.
much.
That's it.
I think that, well, they tell you when you make videos, do not start making a video until you have a good thumbnail. If you have
That's
a good thumbnail, then you can make the story, because no one will watch it if you don't have a good thumbnail. And so that's so cynical, and it's, but there is something that can help you kind of think about how to
yeah.
direct
No,
it.
your
But
thumbnail.
about newspaper articles, so I'm from an age that you would cut out newspaper articles and magazine articles and put them in a folder.
Yeah.
And invariably, when you would go back and look at it, it was always more interesting for what was captured on the backside.
Yeah.
So you're trying to, but what was inadvertently archived is often more telling. It's very difficult to know what to document, what to journal, what to record of any moment. But what you incidentally get sometimes tells more of a story, because it was right in front of you and it was so routine you didn't think about it. An ad for a Radio Shack, whatever it might be, might ultimately mean more to you. It's very hard to know.
It's amazing. You're really jumping on a lot. And the funny thing is I don't care about my thumbnails. My wife cares about hers, but I don't. And so since I take notes, my head is turned this way. And so sometimes it's like, you're not even paying attention to the dude. But the best one is one guy is looking off this way and I'm looking off the other way. And it's like, why would I ever click on this video? They're not even looking at each other.
What you could do, and you don't have to do this because you already work too hard, is you come up with a phrase that comes from your conversation that resonates to you, and you throw it up there.
Oh, I know.
Because then they're all different from one another.
That's so much work. I'm like, please. It's hard enough just getting me to sit here and hit the button. And
no, you do a lot. You do a lot. I'm impressed.
But anyways, this is, you anticipated. Duchamp says along these lines, there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your reader when you're writing your travel articles, when you were writing in high school and college, and when you're doing your podcast? How much do you think of your consumer when you're making your art?
It depends on what it is. My favorite travel writing was guidebooks, because an article was an indulgence that would go to somewhere where someone would choose to read it or not, but they would not be going to that destination. Now, maybe there's a model in travel or in how you see the world that they can adapt to wherever they are.
Yeah.
But a guidebook are giving them individual tools. The writing is unimportant. Individual tools that they can use to construct, because they are going to Bulgaria. And maybe they want to go to cities, maybe they want to go to mountains, maybe they want to go to beaches, maybe they want to try food. It's all there. They can use and take what they want and build it to something. But at the same time, a lot of the videos and stuff I do for myself. And you do think about it in a way that you hope that it will resonate with people. But my favorite Robert's Record Corner that I've done in the last year was on jazz. And it is the least views that I have.
I was going to comment on that. That's the one I sent to all these. I know the best jazz scholars in LA, literally. And I sent that to all of them. I says, can you believe this? This is amazing, how the editing and the sensibility of the graphics and the writing. And it was so intense for me to revisit that. I don't like to really watch things over. Like, I just see them once and then I send them to my friends and let them react.
Okay.
And that was really good. I mean, I
try to use visual. We go back into language, right? And I used to only write for years and years, and then I got to a point where occasionally you would have to do PowerPoint presentations or speak at some event, and I started using the PowerPoint presentation as punchlines. And I would use visual information to add it, and then that's what the video editing comes. You do want to add visually in
Yeah.
those things, or I try to add
Yeah.
to what's being said.
No,
Okay.
you have a great editing sense and a great graphic sense. That's the thing. You got, 3 to 8 minutes to do tutorials on YouTube now.
Uh-huh.
That's, why watch the movie? Why? That's why trailers,
Yeah.
to me are like, I don't watch movies. I just watch the trailer. I'm not going to spend 90 minutes of my life. Although I want to see the new Sly Stone doc, and I really wanted to see the Led Zeppelin doc in IMAX on
Yeah.
a huge screen with
Fun.
amazing sound. And then I realized they use the word IMAX in all the theaters. They're not IMAX theaters, they're just IMAX-ish.
I went to see the 70 millimeter version of Brutalist recently, which is a 3.5 hour movie with an intermission. And I thought, okay, let's see this 70 millimeter in action. And I realized halfway through, oh, I forgot this is supposed to look better. I didn't see any difference whatsoever.
Right.
But I like the intermission. And I like the style. I like that part. That was good.
Yeah.
I enjoyed being at a film like that because it felt like a big moment of going into a movie and seeing a long movie. There's intermission. Everyone was tricked, like I was, to believe in 70 millimeter. So we paid more for it and all that. But the environment was special. So I don't regret it at all. But I don't go to movies much.
No, it's sad. We all grew up on this phenomenon of movies in a theater, and you couldn't fast forward, you couldn't pause. You had to sit there. And I went and saw the Dylan film, and I would love to know if you saw it, whether it's like, so anyways, at some point I'd love to talk to you about it. But I don't like to talk to people about movies until they've seen it, you know.
I understand.
But Robert, I asked for 90 minutes, so we're already over 90, and I would love to do a part 2 so we could get deeper into music and into a lot of the topics we didn't cover. I mean, on my script, we're at question number 16, and I like to get through 40, but I'm doing these part 2s. I'm doing these part 2s now because I can find them that are a little more leisurely, and I'm not cutting people off. Because the process of talking, you kind of suss it out, and then I cut in, and they might have been just there to reach their pinnacle epiphany statement, and I cut it off. So
the 63 Volkswagen Bug that I want in heaven, right? I didn't know that initially till we started talking, and I went, yes, now, if I'm ever asked that again, I'll know. I want the 63 Volkswagen, metallic brown with a giant sunroof. You could stand up and look out, and the heater that's on in summer, and the put on. I want that car, but I didn't know that initially. So to your point, sometimes it takes time.
It's called an epiphany in everydayness. That's what Joyce was trying to do, is in everydayness, you can have an epiphany. You can read some classic thing, but you can also just stub your toe and go, wow, I didn't realize that. So thank you so much, Robert. This was truly enlightening, and I appreciate your time and energy, and I hope we can book a part 2 somewhere down the line. And even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button now, I hope this never ends and we can keep talking forever and ever.
Thank you. And thank you for doing this. This is a wonderful series you do. You deserve a lot of credit for this. It's an amazing thing that you offer people these opportunities to listen in and to speak on these important issues. So thank you.
I appreciate those words, Robert, and it was truly enlightening for me. And I'll never forget how great and hearty and wild, reckless, abandoned laugh I got when you said, "You don't use kazoos in rock music." That was the line that got me, and then I realized there's a lot more to this guy than dissing kazoos.
I should have brought a kazoo. I don't have one. Next time I'll have one with me.
No, I got one right here. We should close out with the.
Thanks, Jerry.
See you, Robert. Thank you.